Ghana's social intervention policies have been lauded at the just-ended Conference of Latin American States attended by the Vice President, Mr. John Dramani Mahama. The conference, which was held in Brazil, was a platform where developing countries assessed their performance in terms of poverty alleviation. And
Brazil was a model for the discussion because she had successfully transformed her economy and has now become a donor. Napoleon Atuhito reports.
When you mention Brazil, what readily comes to mind is their passion for football. As a first-timer in this massive South American nation, my curiosity weighed towards the popular sport, which Brazil dominates the world. That enthusiasm whittled down, seeing the other remarkable developments in the country. Unlike some powerful nations wilting under the pangs of the global economic order, the Brazilian economy is resilient. She recently whizzed past the United Kingdom, becoming the world's sixth largest economy. That growth is led on by increased domestic demand and job opportunities. Ghana appears to buy into the Brazilian achievement, as exemplified in the Vice President's visits, inviting Brazilian hands into the Ghanaian economy. And so, welcome to Brazil, precisely the political capital of Brasilia, where the 5th Latin American Ministerial Summit was held under the auspices of the Brazilian government and the UNDP. Ghana's Vice President, Mr. John Dramani Mahama, was the most senior political figure invited to the conference, which saw representatives of 18 other African countries also in attendance. The theme of the conference was fighting poverty. The Brazilian example, which is widely acclaimed, became the focal point of their discussion. Over the years, Brazil, a nation of 200 million people, has surprised the world by taking 28 million Brazilians out of poverty and moving 36 million people to middle class. The country is still working at the plight of some 16 million facing extreme poverty through a program called Brazil Without Extreme Poverty. The man credited for the transformational leadership was former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. He said he began life as a poor man, so he understood what it takes to overcome the challenges facing that class of people. He said when his programs were showing results, his political opponents called it a trash. However, his government persevered to the hilt and made sure the right things were done for the people. The former Brazilian leader noted that his first 4-year term focused on social interventions to reduce poverty, and then by the end of his 8-year term in office, major infrastructural projects had been completed.
Brazil has a few successful experiences that might make a decisive positive contribution towards that end. Basically, it's all about including and seeing the poor as citizens who are active participants of history rather than supporting players, which was what they used to be so far.
The administrator of the UNDP, Helen Clark, who is a former Prime Minister of New Zealand, noted that 7 African countries achieved a growth of over 7% in the past year. To her, Africa is also making progress in the right direction. This probably prepared the grounds for a presentation by Ghana, which registered the fastest growth rate in the world last year. The Vice President, Mr. John Dramani Mahama, among other things, mentioned the school feeding program, the gradual removal of schools under trees, free school uniforms, and textbooks and entrepreneurship training for the youth.
Over the last 3 years, we built 1,732 schools in areas where they didn't have school blocks so that they can go to school every day. We distributed 3 million school uniforms to children so that they can go to school in confidence. We distributed 43 million exercise books so that when the class is going on, they can take down notes. We have devoted 30% of the national budget to education to ensure that as many children are able to go to school. And then we have a school feeding program. And so when the children go to school, they're fed 1 hot meal a day. And that has increased our school enrollments to almost 97%. We have parity between boys and girls. The same number of boys going to school are the same number of girls going to school. It wasn't so before.
Ghana was highly commended for the programs being implemented to alleviate poverty and bridge social inequality gaps. Indeed, fighting poverty and hunger are some of the areas that Ghana has scored good marks under the Millennium Development Goals. It therefore comes as little surprise that one of the most successful countries in that enterprise, Brazil, takes Ghana seriously and invited the Vice President to hear out the Ghana experience. Napoleon Atukito reporting.